Joe, do you want to introduce one of Dr. Vaughn Johnson today?
I love it. Dr. Johnson is a dear friend.
Oh, can I lead this for a second? There was a discussion. I said, man, in my best day, I've never had arms that cut. And I go to the gym. And then this is the slide that we have of Dr. J. And look at his arm.
He could be the model.
He could be.
He could be the model. You hear that, Dr. Johnson? Look at that. Look at that beastly man there. Dr. Johnson is a board-certified physician. We got to learn Dr. Johnson here in Utah. He was our parents' doctor, as well as our brother. Look at that. Hey, Dr. Johnson. And he was our brother. In fact, he delivered our brother's children's. And amazing doctor. We just love Dr. Johnson. We've traveled the world together. He happens to be living now in Montana as a ER physician in a town in Montana. We're grateful that he has joined our team as part of our medical advisory board. And he is here today to share some thoughts with us. Dr. Johnson, can you hear us? You mute. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, hang on.
There we go.
Hey,
They're good.
this is a lot of IT stuff for a doc, and it's way above my pay grade. So thanks for inviting me. One of the most common things that I see in the ER, of course, is our little friend cardiovascular disease. And you showed a slide a little bit earlier that, alluded to some of the effects that olive oil and the Mediterranean diet, which is rich in olive oil, has on that, on the effects of cardiovascular disease. But today I wanted to focus real quick, if it's okay with everybody, on a study that was actually published in 2013 that has been a real shocker for a lot of physicians, because it showed the effects of, lifestyle modification, predominantly, diet, and the effects that it could have on certain markers in this world of what we call cardiovascular disease, and which is huge, because cardiovascular disease is still the number one killer, in the United States, and very fast becoming the number one killer worldwide. And so, so in medicine, what we try to do is treat it, and probably the best thing we can do is prevent it. And as you guys know, in medicine, we're not always the fastest to jump on the prevention bandwagon. It's kind of the old story that, if you step on a tack and you go to the doc and say, "Doc, I got this tack in my foot and it hurts." And we look at that and we scratch our chin and we write a prescription for an anti-inflammatory, and we say, "Well, here, take this for the pain. That should help." You come back a week later and go, "Doc, it's not any better." So we're like, "Well, here's an antibiotic. Take that, and let's see if that helps." It never occurs to us to take out the tack, right? And so that's the one thing that we can do by consuming on a daily basis. Dietary, and then also physical activity is a huge one. If I could prescribe exercise, it would be a blockbuster drug. But unfortunately, here in the United States, we're fairly sedentary. But if we can get moving, that's going to be a huge issue that will move the needle in preventing cardiovascular disease. But when we say cardiovascular disease, that includes a lot of issues, not only heart attacks, but also stroke, which is basically a brain attack. It's a blood clot in the brain. We're also seeing issues in the lungs nowadays, with a lot of blood clots in the lungs, a lot of blood clots in the vasculature, in the legs, and other areas of the body. And so that's all inclusive when we say cardiovascular disease. So, back in 2013, these researchers got together and they did what they called a multi-center randomized controlled trial, which is a gold standard of doing a study, because you have several different hospitals that are in clinics that are involved. And so it's not just biased in one clinic, and nobody knows exactly, in the randomizer, you're assigning people to different groups. And in this study, they did 3 different groups, which was kind of fun what they did. 8,000 people, almost, about 7,500 participants, and equally divided between men and women. And they put them in a Mediterranean diet supplemented with 4 teaspoons of olive oil a day, extra virgin olive oil. they took the Mediterranean diet and they gave them a handful of almonds, hazelnuts, and walnuts, so a handful of nuts, and they put them in a second group. And then the third group followed our traditional American Heart Association low-fat diet recommendation. And they watched them for 5 years,
Wow.
which again is a great study because it wasn't for 4 weeks, it wasn't for 6 weeks. I mean, for 5 years, and they basically compared the incidence of, again, cardiovascular disease. And since then, they've broken down this study even to more compelling information. But as you guys can imagine, what they saw was a significant reduction in cardiovascular events, predominantly heart attacks and strokes, and lung clots in the peripheral vasculature, as we call it, in the group of the first and second group. So the Mediterranean diet supplemented with EVOO, and then the Mediterranean diet supplemented with nuts. And then they actually took those two groups and compared them. And really the all-star was the group that not only ate a Mediterranean style diet, but they also supplemented with the extra virgin olive oil. And so actually, and that's it, this, I should mention this, there was one study that said, no, the nut group did the best. But if you looked at the study, the authors had to reveal that they were all employed by the Nut Association of America. And so there was a little bit of a bias there, right? And so that's the only one that showed that the nut group did best, is when the people that were paid by the nut people said, hey, this is a little better way to eat. I'm not trying to say nuts aren't healthy, but certainly they are and can be. But the group that it supplemented the extra virgin olive oil really did the best. And what I want to mention is what they saw was a significant reduction in not only cardiovascular events, almost 50%, which is huge. If a drug did that, it'd be a blockbuster. We're lucky if our cholesterol lowering drugs, if you take them every day for 5 years, it extends your life for 4 days. So not a big return on your investment, especially when you're fighting the side effects of what those medications can provide. And so to bring into extra virgin olive oil into your diet on a daily basis will not only significantly reduce, the potential for cardiovascular disease, but it also had a significant reduction in blood pressure, increased insulin sensitivity, and then your slide earlier alluded to reduction in inflammation. And when you look at inflammation, that's really the underlying issue. That's the tack in the foot. Inflammation is driving a lot of the diseases that we're seeing today. The reason we get insulin resistance and diabetes is because we're inflamed. The reason we get cardiovascular disease is because we're inflamed. The reason our blood pressure goes up, elevated blood pressure, that's a symptom, it's not a disease. Unfortunately, we treat it as a disease in medicine, but that's a result of inflammation in the system. So if I can lower inflammation through lifestyle, then I'm going to get to the root problem. I'm, again, taking out that tack out of the foot and not just treating the downstream symptoms of having a tack stuck in my foot, right? And I just use that as an example. And so, so if we know that in extra virgin olive oil, there's very powerful compounds that behave very much in the anti-inflammatory cascade in the body. And so, and your earlier slide alluded that it works in the same pathway as ibuprofen, much more powerful than ibuprofen. And ibuprofen, unfortunately, has a potential for a lot of side effects. And I see that again in the emergency department, where we see gastrointestinal bleeding and some of these issues, as well as kidney damage and some of the effects that it can have on the liver, where we don't see that with extra virgin olive oil. And so, kind of a fun study. And so it's called the PRIMED study, and or they call it the PREDIMED study, which is it's an abbreviation. The PRE comes from prevention. And if you get into, I'm probably going to butcher this in the world of Italian, but it's Prevenzione con Dieta Mediterranea. So that's where they get that abbreviation, the PREDIMED study. You guys can look this up on PubMed. It's kind of a fun study, and there's been a lot of what we call meta-analysis on this study since then, where they study the study. and they break it down into the prevention of diabetes, the prevention, again, of insulin resistance. But really the all-star is reducing that inflammation. And when you do that, you're really ahead of the curve, and that's going to move the needle in your health so that you can, in our world, not only, maybe it's going to be hard to add days to your lives, but you can add life to your days, right? And that's where by incorporating these lifestyle modifications, you're going to achieve that goal.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was amazing. And Dr. J, we're already getting requests for, if you can text maybe the name of the study. Your pronunciation was pretty good though, brother. I gotta give you credit. There was even a little R. So, but if you could can you strip out the name of that study and send it, and we can share it with the group?
I sure will, and I broke out my favorite beanie today just for you guys, so just so you know that.
Appreciate it. We're Adidas fans. I'm wearing my Adidas.
Yeah, I'm in Montana. You got to wear a beanie, right? So.
Yeah. We're Canadian. We highly approve.
We call it a toque in Canada.
Yeah. Dr. Johnson, you're the best. We appreciate you, brother, and folks that you're getting maybe your first exposure to Dr. Johnson, you'll see he is a medical doctor with a personality that isn't always the same. Like those things don't always go in the same category, right? And my parent, by the way, if Dr. J, if you saw the beginning of the presentation with my mom getting out of that gondola in Italy, I think it's interesting to note Dr. Johnson was the medical doctor for my mom and my dad when they moved to Utah. My parents are very picky about who they go to a medical doctor, okay? They pretty much didn't like any medical doctor until they met Dr. Johnson, and they loved him to death. So anyway, Dr. J, thank you.
We sure appreciate you, Dr. Johnson. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule.
Hey, always glad to help. Well, I appreciate that, and I'll never forget your mom. It was always a pleasure to see her in clinic. And she'd always, as soon as I walk in the room, she'd stand up and, "Oh, Dr. Johnson!" I'll never forget that. That's stuck in my heart forever. She's such a doll. I loved her.
Thank you. We love
Thank you.
Have an amazing day.
Happy New Year, too.
Yes.
Well, and it was surprising to me, sorry, real quick, that, your parents could produce a child like David, your brother, but other than that, they did pretty good, okay?
Shay.
Yeah. That's actually how I met Dr. Johnson. My brother teaches at a medical school locally here, folks. I don't know if you know Dr. J. He got recruited away to start that new med school in Utah County. So we'll talk offline.
Oh,